Oh, tastes like metal. 4 years ago, I released a video called Mario Bava Horror Movies Ranked 2020 BAVA-THON. And recently, I even did a reaction to it. Well, today I thought it'd be fun to give Italian horror's maybe not so prodigal son, Lamberto Bava, the same treatment. Before we get into it, let's get a quick history lesson. Buckle up. Mario Bava, Lamberto's father, was a majorly important progenitor of Italian horror. In 1960, Mario Bava breaks through with the classic Black Sunday, or The Mask of the Demon, followed by The Girl Who Knew Too Much, Black Sabbath, and Blood and Blacklace, all of which gained some crossover international notoriety. From 1964 to 1970, Lamberto Bava serves as an AD on his father's films like Planet of the Vampires, Kill Baby Kill, Danger Diabolique, and Hatchet for the Honeymoon. In 1970, Dario Argento directs The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, a film inspired by Mario Bava's The Girl Who Knew Too Much and Blood and Blacklace. Crystal Plumage cements giallo as a genre and further popularizes Italian horror with international audiences. From 1970 to 1977, Lamberto continues to AD on his father's films like Baron Blood and Lisa and the Devil, while Argento continues to grow in popularity with Cat o' Nine Tails, Four Flies, Deep Red, and most importantly, Suspiria. In 1977, Mario Bava directs his final film, Shock, which was rewritten by Lamberto Bava from the script originally floated to him early in the 70s. In 1980, Lamberto ADs a film by none other than Dario Argento called Inferno, a spiritual successor to Suspiria. Also in the crew, in the effects department of all places, is Mario Bava, who Argento had long admired. That spring, Lamberto Bava would also release his feature directorial debut, Macabre, which we'll be talking about soon. Later that month, Mario Bava would die from a heart attack at the age of 65. Throughout the 80s and into the 90s, Argento would continue to release films like Tenebrae, Phenomena, Opera, Trauma, and the Stendhal Syndrome to great audience reception. Argento and Lamberto Bava would even collaborate on Lamberto's Two Demons films, which Argento co-wrote and produced. Lamberto Bava, however, largely did not see the same success as Argento. Many of his films were TV movies and remakes or re-releases of films he had worked on with his father. Lamberto wasn't even runner-up. I think that honor would have to go to Lucio Fulci, the Cuckoo Bananas director of classics like The Beyond, Zombie, and certified ADR nightmare The House by the Cemetery.
Yes, I did! I saw her face. She was waving and I could read her mouth. Yep, she said that I shouldn't go over there. Why did she say that, Mommy?
We'll get back to you, Bob. But let's give Lamberto his flowers today. I'm going to be reviewing and ranking 12 of his horror films spanning from 1980 to 1992. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of why Argento continued to trend upward while Lamberto seemed to stall in place. Starting with number 12. So to set up each film, I'll be reading the Letterboxd synopsis instead of the IMDb one because I feel like they're better by and large, but I might immediately regret that with our first film. Nicola, a cop, spies on his wife Sarah buying sexy black panties and realizes that she is having an affair. Following a violent confrontation, he leaves her. Immediately after, whilst taking a shower, Sarah is stabbed to death with an ice pick. Believing it to be a simple crime of passion, the police assign Inspector Piero Terzi to bring his former colleague in. But Professor Anna Berardi, a criminal psychologist who is friends with both men, believes that Nicola is innocent. She suggests that the real killer is Franco Tribbo, a maniac known as the Midnight Killer, who supposedly died in a hospital fire several years previously. Terzi is not convinced, but Nicola is killed and the murders continue. Phew. Boring, bog standard, and beige. Claudio Simonetti from Goblins on the score, but aside from that funky little track under the opening credits, nothing else really caught my ear. I've seen some rank this pretty high, citing one pretty memorable scene, but that just isn't enough to secure a recommendation from me. It's not offensively bad, and I think that's actually to its detriment. I promise I'll have more to say about later entries, but man, I've really got nothing on this one. Bruno, an up-and-coming film composer, has been hired to write the score to a new horror movie. After moving into a secluded villa, life begins to imitate art as a vicious killer starts bumping off anyone and everyone who happens to pay him a visit. Bava Jr. sure loves the whole movies within movies thing, huh? You'll see what I mean later. And we're off to a great start with A Blade in the Dark. I mean, Bob from Fulci's House by the Cemetery is here, so that's worlds colliding. Here we've got a pretty standard one-location slasher. We do get those mystery giallo elements, but they mostly feel like subterfuge. And I'm sorry, but I feel like they could have picked a scarier weapon for the killer than an X-Acto knife. It's not very impressive visually. At the end of the day, what you have with A Blade in the Dark is a mostly dull but occasionally visually interesting giallo. There are a few cool ideas, like the underwater shots or the tennis ball motif, but on the whole, it's nothing you haven't seen done better before. There's even a Psycho-esque plot explanation scene at the end, as if it wasn't dumbed down enough. An American horror writer, haunted by childhood nightmares, moves to an old mansion in Italy with her husband and young son, only to discover the nightmares were real. Let's start off with the positives. BAVA was already off to a great start. Creature feature haunted house films are entirely my jam, so I went in rooting for the ogre. Great score by Simon Boswell. I mean, this thing seriously rocks. Great atmosphere, huge gothic sets with cobwebs covering everything and lightning crashing outside the windows. Very cozy, it feels a lot like Hell Night in that way. And as always, great dubbing.
It should be a little town.
Very well. Now we can ask for information.
Daddy,
Yeah?
how much horsepower does this car have?
Over 100.
Wow.
All of these things make for a great background movie, something you pop on while you do jazzercise or crochet dream catchers or whatever you get up to, I don't know. The issues come when you try to actively watch this movie to take notes, in which case it's, you guessed it, pretty boring. Even so, there are some cool things to be mined here. The idea of having Cheryl turn into her child self while exploring the castle in her sleep is pretty cool. It's very whimsical. Also, this movie's patented kid in peril is named Bob. Big shoes. Big shoes.
Big shoes.
But yeah, this is just one that would have benefited from being a 30-minute Tales from the Crypt episode or Creepshow anthology rather than a feature film. Honestly, just watch Troll 2. A marine biologist, a dolphin trainer, a research scientist, and a local sheriff try to hunt down a large sea monster, a shark-octopus hybrid that is devouring swimmers and fishermen off a South Florida coast. I gotta say, going in, I was ready to be bored to tears. BAVA didn't even put his own name on it, instead going under the pseudonym John Old Jr., a reference to his dad's American stage name. But I gotta say, with the quaint beachfront setting and not totally unmemorable cast, I didn't hate Devilfish. It moves at a good pace, the devilfish or monster shark in question has a great practical head, and we get both shark rampage and human murder plots. Best of both worlds. Now, would I ever watch it again? I doubt it. But as far as Jaws ripoffs go, you could do worse. Much, much worse. A camera crew unearths a 1,000-year-old vampire from Mesopotamia. Years after his rise from the grave, the vampire becomes a famous horror film director and holds auditions for his up-and-coming film. 4 young hopefuls are chosen and are invited to spend the night at the vampire's house. At dinner, the vampire reveals his true nature to his guests and the real reason why they're there: to kill him before dawn, as he has grown bored with his existence. This is one of many in this list that skates by on its set design, score, and short runtime. The vampire's initial Nosferatu-esque appearance is sort of cool. I especially love the stop-motion effects we get when he's coming back to life in the opening. But for the majority of the film, he's Tuxedo Man. And if you like laughing at hideously 80s fashion, you're gonna love this one. This is also another movies within movies heavy flick. There's a gorgeous scene where the cast watches a vampire movie in a screening room bathed in red. Very Argento-esque. I will say, overall it seems like a lot more care was expended with less expenses spared in this TV movie than in some of his actual theatrical feature films. It's a fun film, whose greatest crime is maybe being sort of forgettable. Joya is a buxom centerfold working for Pussycat magazine. In such a profession, having an admirer or two is expected, but Joya's admirer is a vicious killer. He murders her fellow magazine models one at a time, using a variety of twisted implements of death. Joya is the lucky recipient of a collection of photos, each with murdered bodies arranged around posters of her. This one feels more like a real giallo. A few pretty cool kills followed by a not very convincing reveal at the end of the mystery rainbow. I think they really had something here, conceptually. In execution, this one feels pretty beige. The eye mask killer is a cool visual that I honestly think could have caught on as an iconic thing had the movie been, better. I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to hear that this one is mostly worth a watch for the soundtrack. A homicide detective realizes that the brutal murders committed by a mysterious serial killer he's after have something to do with the late husband of a beautiful widow. There's a lot of maturity in the filmmaking here. It's obvious Lamberto is applying himself a little more than in his other films of this period. In presentation, it almost feels like a late 80s Argento. Of course, almost being the operative word. I watched this online in 480p, but even so I can tell that this would look amazing on the big screen in 35mm. It's obvious from the cinematography and soundtrack that a lot more care was expended on this outing than the films that precede and follow it. The lead, Joanna Pacula, also gives a decent performance with what she's given. That said, when Lamberto's not working with Argento, he has a nasty habit of making 98 minutes feel like 98 hours. We're back to the pseudo-giallo murder mystery a la Blade in the Dark or Delirium. There's just no spunk here, no electricity. I don't know how to describe it, but you know it when you see it, and you won't see it here. 5 young robbers spend a whole night in a dark catacomb to win a priceless treasure. They will have to fight against lots of ferocious zombies and vampires. At the end, they will meet the death in person. The characters in this film are what a middle-aged Italian man's idea of how cool American teens act. Shoplifting, hard rock, and Confederate flags. Yeah, what's going on with that? Speaking of middle-aged Italian men, we get a director's cameo in this film. Anyways, after their super cool van breaks down, because they drove it into a river, they inexplicably decide to camp in some nearby ruins, only to wake up in the middle of the night and discover a tavern complete with a Miller High Life neon sign beneath them. Inside it's a dusty Gothic cellar. Then they decide to order sausages in the middle of the night instead of asking for a phone. I'll have some of whatever Dardano Sacchetti was having when he wrote this. There's like a weird incest thing going on between this guy and his sister. They're always cuddling and pining after each other. I don't know what's going on with that. Also, one guy keeps taking his shirt off in the brisk, foggy night when everyone else is wearing jackets. There's some good soundtrack cues to be heard and atmosphere to soak in if you can get past the atrocious ADR. It's sort of cozy in the Hammer horror or Tales from the Crypt kind of way, but like you'll find with most Lamberto Bava joints, this is really a background movie. Trying to watch this intently to take notes is gonna leave you pretty bored pretty quick. Listen, this is definitely objectively worse than a Blade in the Dark and Delirium, but it's also markedly more fun. So your mileage may vary, but I know which film I would rather rewatch. In this loose remake of Black Sunday, a group of skiers in northern Italy land in a huge crevice where they find the body of a long-dead girl covered by a mask. Out of curiosity, and nothing better to do, they remove the mask and start playing games with it. Turns out, this dead girl's the witch Anubis, who has been condemned to die by burning, and the mask put on her face to prevent her return. So this is purportedly a loose remake of Mario Bava's breakthrough hit, with its title being based on the original title for Black Sunday. And when they say loose, they mean it. This feels more like the 30th sequel in a franchise, where the Mask of Satan makes its way into another person's hands. In this film, the Mask of Satan looks less like a Japanese Oni or a Kabuki mask, and more like a hockey mask, or something out of Jason X, which is a downgrade if you ask me. The change of scenery is nice. I mean, just like with Devilfish, having new stuff to look at is refreshing. In the first act, we get snowy scenery, and the whole film has a cold, doomy vibe. The sets are really cool, from icy Wampa caves to Resident Evil-esque snowy villages to Egyptian Gothic crypts. It's obvious this wasn't a run-and-gun weekend production. There was actually some thought, and maybe more importantly, budget pumped into this thing. There's some cool music on the soundtrack, which is to be expected. Lots of ethereal synthesized flute. But this is basically the Graveyard Disturbance Christmas special. Maybe not quite as fun, but definitely more proficient in almost every way. And while skiers aren't exactly my preferred social circle, at least they aren't claiming the Civil War is about states' rights. A middle-aged woman traumatized from the death of her adulterous lover moves into a room at a New Orleans boarding house where the blind landlord becomes suspicious to her activities of continuing her affair with her dead lover. This one skates by on the merits of its first 5 minutes and last 10 minutes alone. At the start of the first act and the end of the third, this is a certified surreal psychosexual masterpiece. For the rest of the runtime, Macabre is just interesting enough to get you from point A to point B. There are some really cool parts here and there, with some scenes even reminding me of frankly better giallos like Cat o' Nine Tails. But this is just another example of how and I can't believe I'm saying this, high concept story could have been so much better if it had been given to a surer-handed director. A group of tenants and visitors are trapped in a 10-story high-rise apartment building infested with demons who proceed to hunt the dwindling humans down. Demons 2 went the Gremlins 2 route. People liked the funny, ridiculous parts of Demons 1, so we're gonna give them more of that. Non-stop, full-throttle, high-intensity fun. This is a Lamberto joint with a Dario Argento cosign. I guess they were broing out big time at this point. You can even see his daughter Aja Argento, who would later go on to be successful in her own right, in her first role. Demons 1 took place in a movie theater, this time we're in an apartment building. Slightly less cool, but they milked that setting for all it's worth. Bobby Rhodes' Hank the hypertension-laden fitness instructor is the real standout here. Imagine the sweatiest man you can think of, then double the sweat factor.
Let's get out of here! Let's get out of here! Come on, go move your ass! Get out of here! Stand back! Stand back! Yes, we can! That door leads to the garage! No! Now just take it easy! To the garage! Get going!
Very trashy, very fun, check it out. A group of people are trapped in a West Berlin movie theater infested with ravenous demons who proceed to kill and possess the humans one by one, thereby multiplying their numbers. Demons is a film that delivers. Chekhov's gun is old news. How about Chekhov's dirt bike and samurai sword? Demons takes advantage of every corner of its setting. This film is to movie theaters what Dawn of the Dead is to malls. Every character archetype is here. Punks, pimps, pensioners, nerds, and ne'er-do-wells, and they all have to reckon with the titular demons before the night is over. Bobby Rhodes is back and sweatier than ever.
Will you get out of my way?
What's the matter with you?
Holy shit! She's a friend of mine! Hey, baby. Son of a bitch! Shit! She put on that mask and scratched herself. Get it? Because of that scratch, she became a demon. An instrument of evil. Like they said in the damn movie, you heard them. Right?
Yes.
And of course, once again, the film has a hilariously literal soundtrack performed by all the hot contemporary rockers. Also, there's another surprise cameo at the end by none other than Bob. What else could you ask for? The key thing that the Demons movies get right is the fun factor. That's why they're both at the top of this list. So often BAVA Jr. films have a few really cool scenes or great ideas, but by the time they get around to them, the viewer is already checked out. If you can't reach prestige, at least aim for fun, and that's what Demons 1 and 2 understand. Well, there you have it. 12 horror films directed by Lamberto Bava, ranked. What a ride. I would say it was full of peaks and valleys. but it was more like 10 consecutive valleys, followed by 2 just beautiful, super scenic neon vistas. I don't know, on revisiting some of these films to editing clips for this video, I was like, oh man, that was fun, I should go and rewatch that. And then I would sit down to rewatch it, and I would immediately remember why I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. I just think Lamberto Bava fares better when he surrounds himself with other talent, whether that's ADing on his dad's movies, or co-directing with Argento. He really thrives under collaboration. He's like the Joe Biden of Giallo. And don't get me wrong, I think he's definitely a very talented individual. I mean, he's like well above my talent bracket. But when you compare him to like Argento and Fulci, man, it's just not even close.
Big shoes. Big shoes.
So what do you think? Have you guys seen any Lamberto Bava movies? Or if you haven't, did this video kind of catch your eye? Did I sway you to seeing any? Maybe I did a really good job selling them, I don't know. Definitely let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for the support. Arrivederci.
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 Arrivederci. Arrivederci.